From paper to play, each adventure is its own tale. Most are mundane, ordinary, but a few end up here in my special collection. Hello, I'm Dr. Whittlesticks, and today we'll be taking a gander into making an adventure that not only is guaranteed to call back to previously established NPCs, but will also horrify your players and make them make very difficult decisions. And to help explain this adventure, we'll be using Wild Beyond the Witchlight's own Motherhorn adventure as an exoskeleton.
That's true art.
Now, you don't really need any background on Motherhorn to do this, but long story short, obviously if you're planning to play Wild Beyond the Witchlight, don't listen to this. But anyway, long story short, this is the lair of a theatrical hag who just adores tragedy. But mostly, we're just focused on the map and the characters. Speaking of the characters, we're going to talk about one of the hags, or in this case, the main villain of such a quest. Obviously, you can twist and turn this main villain to your own, but this is more or less how to make it killer. As in, like, actual murderer, not, like, really good villain. Now, the first thing you want to think about is, what is the killer's motive? It can be to play with the PCs, such as in the case of someone like Strahd von Zarovich. Not that he's a serial killer. He's worse. Or, in case of our adaptation of Endlin Moongrave, to give every single person their own tragedy. Now, what's very good about Motherhorn, something I would adapt into your own adventure, is that Motherhorn starts with the players performing a play. This kind of gets the players thinking, this will be the theme, this theatrics, or it can be something else, such as like Olympic Games or a rap battle, I have no idea. That, will get your players thinking, oh, okay, this is the type of dungeon we're dealing with. It also gives a reason for the players to eventually be called into the conference room, in which the main encounter will take place. Now, in the case of Motherhorn, this would be room N8. I would suggest ensuring that in the dungeon design you have this small conference room. Basically, inside the conference room, instead of a killer, they will find, it can be a minion, or it can be a puppet, it can be something, but I'd heavily recommend taking from Supermassive Games The Devil in Me and having it be either a puppeted or animatronic corpse. Because, as the Bible says, animatronic corpses are rad. Anyway, you're going to have this animatronic greet the players, they can kind of knows how disgusting it is, and then eventually, it will basically pull a lever, or you can have it just unveil 2 cages held above pits of acid. Inside of either of these cages, 2 recurring NPCs that your players will have to choose from. Whatever one they pick survives, the other one dunked into the acid, body cannot be recovered, trying to circumvent any way for your players. If they try filling with one of the locks, immediately drop. So no, simply doesn't have a lock. How they get in there? Maybe there's some old magical runes. But anyway, now this obviously immediately puts your players in a situation where they have to pick who lives or dies. And that's why I try and find 2 NPCs who they either really like, or just 2 NPCs who they all know and just feel mildly about. You don't want, the barkeep who they love, and then that kind of merchant guy, you're like, I could live without him. I would also recommend finding a piece of music to play every time there is a trap, because there's going to be a lot of traps in this adventure. From then on, the players are free to explore the trapped lair. I'd recommend, including to kind of control their progress, is to say that there is a lever, 1 or 2, on each level. So for instance, if you're on the ground level, to reach the 2nd floor, you need to activate 2 of the levers, or if you start in the basement, you need to pull 1 lever to open up to the 1st floor. Just that way you can kind of keep them on the level, and from there keep all staircases secret. So while they're exploring, I'm going to drop down a kind of mysterious encounter to have. throughout it, I would recommend, especially if you're on like a map you can change, like not on like Roll20, but like just playing in person. I would recommend having walls seemingly shift, dart, smash, close. This kind of gives the players the idea that they are being watched. You know, maybe they can hear that slight sound of footsteps in the walls or something. But anyway, at some point I would have basically one player is locked in, a secret door seemingly opens, maybe shrouded in darkness, or maybe it's like a human who would need a torch. They can't see anything. And you can either have just the killer observe them, maybe do something creepy, chop off a lock of hair, measure them for their own animatronic. Just something kind of get the player thinking, oh crap. And maybe if they attack the killer, then they, bash them in for a round or two before they leave. The walls retract, or maybe a new wall opens and sends the player into another room to keep being, split up the party. Now, for the two levers, these will take place in 4B and 4A. Probably should have said those the other way around. Anyway, this is the map for Motherhorn. You can put them wherever you like. 4A is basically a storage room. And so what I would have is 6 skulls, right? Each of them has like a candle in it, or maybe they're floating candles. And they begin spawning because they light and begin illuminating shadows that attack the players. And maybe so basically every round on initiative count 20, the shadows return. On initiative count 10, you can have the candles release a blinding light on the players. And then on initiative count 0, you can maybe have corpses or mannequin bits begin crawling out of the ground and trying to grab players. This already makes for a very interesting combat because you already have shadows, a very deadly enemy, darting around the room, while there's mannequin bits that can hold people down, and then people being blinded by candles. Now, the only way you can kill the shadows each turn, but the only way to permanently stop their regeneration, and likewise access the lever, is to find some way to put them out. Now, you maybe want to put, a magical, I don't know what you call them, like the things you put on top of a candle to turn it out, or maybe to spell magic works, or maybe, you have to find a special way, maybe you have to close your eyes while you, D-Night, put out the flame. Obviously that's up to you to decide, it's up to your players' imaginations, but that's how I do it. Now for Area 4B, that's much different and much more interesting. So for Area 4B, we're going to take an NPC who maybe the players know. You want one whose name they'll know, but maybe not one that they really care about. And they see them in a cage, chained to the wall. There's maybe a scythe or a saw not too far away. And once again, we're going to draw from the devil in me. And we have the killer, whoever that may be, in this case Endlin Moongrave, steps from a secret door, so they're beside the person tied up on the other end of the cage. One of the players is standing on a pressure plate that is connected to the saw, and basically have them threaten them. Move, and you don't get hurt. But obviously if they move, they'll kill the comrade. This obviously is almost like a trolley scenario. Now, do you risk getting hurt to keep this other person alive, or what? Now, at least in the case of Endlin, her attacks make you move 20 feet. So no matter what, right, that person gets sold. So that's probably, maybe if you want to do it some other way where they can save them, that would be interesting. But either way, you want to have perhaps a different way of saving them, or maybe if they can quickly be smart and put something heavy down permanently that they cannot move, the killer would just leave. By the way, after they solve it, or after the person gets killed, right, killer withdraws into a secret tunnel, and then the bars of the gate just open or shut down, and they have access to the lever, and they can move on to level 2. Lever 2. But, I also go just quickly throw in a few descriptions of some of the other rooms of Motherhorns and the traps I've included for you to get a decent idea of what to think here. In my version, the library of Motherhorn, area M7, I made that suffocation trap. Basically, all the air gets drawn out. I'd probably have that by making either exhaustion or having it deal a certain amount of damage each turn that they don't have air. The reason I did that is thinking that they would want a trap that could hurt people but would not damage any of the books. and books don't need to breathe. And for area M6, that has several small rooms for the different actors of Motherhorn, that has different, basically, gas pipes connected to it. To be careful, because some people can obviously be very sensitive to being, well, not being gassed, but everyone's sensitive to that, but the idea of someone being gassed, depending on their heritage. So, I would be a bit wary about that, but I can definitely play for a morbid scene if they can obviously hear somebody getting killed, and the other actors are just, it's normal to them. I guess they're being replaced. That's just an idea for you. Area M12, which is a, just storage room. I made that into a cold storage for bodies of those who have died. So you cannot just see, probably chunks of meat, because also Motherhorn, oddly enough, lacks a kitchen and lacks anywhere where food could be. So this can not only have, chunks of, I guess, Peridon or fake, weird fake creatures, but it can also have satyr actors or a dryad actor who failed her. And likewise, you can have it shut, and then just have the player begin to make cold weather checks, probably increasing maybe each round as they try and get the door open, and they're just freezing cold in this room. Also, it has the puppet break a leg in there, so maybe that can try and lure them in. You're like, help me, I'm so cold. They come in, door slams behind them, locks. Now they're stuck in a freezing room. So now on to the second level of Motherhorn, or the tower level. So, this one has 3 different levers. We'll just go in order. So, this one, which I'm iffy on, is just, because I'm limited to the map, I would probably recommend creating a more interesting thing. But my idea is having a trap in which the player characters themselves have to tussle. So this is in the hallway leading to M16. Basically, only 2 people can enter. And after that, it slams shut. And then the floor slowly retracts to acid. And one creature has to, fall into the acid or die or something in that room. Obviously, I had the players be able to trick it somehow. It's magical. Maybe just chucking some beef into it. It counts as a dead creature and it'll lock. Or you can just have them fight for her entertainment to show just, look at how mongrels you are. You'll just fight at any reason. Just to pull a lever. Just other kind of different ways. I'm still not sure on that one. However, M17, which is the prison area. Now this area, you should put 5 NPCs who your players have encountered. Maybe one who they haven't, who might have some important information. Maybe an investigator to the killer, or a member of the city guard. Something like that. And long story short, right, players enter, they pull the lever, and since it's a prison, I also have mannequins of all the players drop down, kind of just simply to scare them. And you could have those mannequins maybe be burnt, sliced up, just morbid deaths, and they look like the players. They have their clothes, or maybe they have a fire sword, has a wooden sword that's been painted to look like it's on fire. And each of the jail cells flip around, perhaps to have a door for window on it. So now you see who's inside, and the ceiling starts sinking. And maybe you might want to depend on their height, or you might just want to say, hey, each round you're in here, you take 1d6 damage. But anyway, they start lowering, and you got to figure out a way to get the most people out. I would recommend probably just about limiting it to saying only maybe 3 of the 4 can even escape. But, so no matter what, somebody gets, crushed, and, everyone else escapes. And then finally is M18. It's like a little playroom. In this case, you can probably have the players directly interact with Endlin for a short while, her likely on the stage, ready to flee at any moment. And then when they activate the lever, besides opening up the staircase, they see raising from the floor. Now you want to pick 2 NPCs who are very closely related. Whether it be a pair of brothers, this can be, a couple, something like that. In my game, I did Mr. Witch and Mr. Light, who are 2 carnival owners. And basically, both of them are chained to a saw, and it's just slowly coming close to them. Kind of like that trap at the beginning of Saw 3D. That's the right movie. I have no idea. I haven't watched any of those movies. I can't stomach that stuff. However, I can stomach describing it in a fantasy role-playing game. But anyway, it just begins pulling them closer. And then, you can either have the players vote on who survives, or you can have them roll strength to see who lives. But either way, one lives. Now, you might be wondering, why are we doing mostly NPCs. Most NPCs are the ones who are getting maimed here. And this comes down to the player characters themselves. You can't make your player characters fodder. A level 8 player character cannot be killed in 2 rounds. Random NPC probably doesn't even have stats before this situation. I can believe that they, pit trap activates, they die. Or something else, or the killer just snuck by, slit their throat. It's important to use NPCs, and there is actually going to be a big reason why. You want to have saved a whole bunch of the NPCs throughout the adventure. There will be a, culmination of that. Reward for doing it. But it leads to more interesting fodder, and obviously if your players know this NPCs, and likewise, if people don't know they know these NPCs, it gives you this idea that this person's been watching us, Anyway, so they lead up, and then they get to the final lever. And just how Motherhorn set up, due to it being on a mountain, there are areas of it that have balconies. And then between 2 balconies is the lever. There is no floor beneath it. So the player has to climb on the wall and pull the lever. And there's the final test. A powerful person they know, maybe a fellow mage, maybe a rival adventurer who they've encountered, someone who can fight, preferably ranged, is forced to battle them. Whoever can stay on, doesn't fall to their fate down the mountain of Motherhorn, wins. So you can let that happen, and obviously more than likely the player will win. And this is the reason why we've mostly been doing NPCs, is that the final door to enter into the boss's chambers needs a blood sacrifice. And you can say 100 hit points, 50 hit points, I don't know what level your players are. But you want them to have a certain hit point threshold that you have to damage. So if you manage to save 4 or 5 people, and each of them have 20 hit points to give, you can go into that fight not having to sacrifice anything. If you only really manage to save 1 or 2 people, you're unfortunately just going to have to, give much more of the player's hit points. This also works great, since this dungeon does have a lot of combat, and you often want to be able to drain your players' resources beforehand. Whether that be them healing up with spell slots afterwards, or them, using their lay on hands, or their cleric of light abilities to heal up. It uses players' resources, something that won't often happen. Not saying that will completely avoid combat, but it'll be much harder to encounter in this. So finally, they'll be able to confront your killer. You might have them duck into secret doors throughout, or have them, have pre-set up traps that you can activate like lair actions, so you can just have a scythe come out the side of the wall, or have a trap door open, or have sleeping gas release from the wall, whatever you want to do. But anyway, that is kind of the layout I'd give for this Saw murder hotel, murder theater inspired adventure. So I'm about to play this in a couple weeks with my Wild Beyond the Witchlight group, so I'll let you know how it goes. If you're interested or have any questions about such a scenario, go ahead and ask me in the comments below, and I will see you next time. And remember, kids, if you were invited to a murder hotel, always accept. They're very kind.